Former President Donald Trump said he's going to give a speech, testimony, at his own trial. There are some twists and turns. And also, you know who else said, hey, I'm going to make the trial my day to give a speech? Hitler. And he did. I'm going to tell you what happened. Put up the picture full mass. Trump wants to give closing arguments at his fraud trial. Closing arguments. Former President Donald Trump is on trial in New York in a $250 million civil lawsuit that could alter the personal fortune and personal real estate empire that helped propel him to the White House. Trump, his sons Eric and Donald Jr., and other top Trump organization executives are accused by who? New York Attorney General Letitia James. I actually interviewed A.G. James a couple of years ago. That interview was at WOK.com. She said at that time she was going to prosecute Trump if the evidence was there. Just a side note. The Attorney General of the state of New York says that Trump engaged in a decade-long scheme in which they used, him and his cronies, quote, numerous acts of fraud and misrepresentation to inflate Trump's net worth in order to get more favorable loan terms. The trial comes after the judge in the case ruled in a partial summary judgment that Trump had submitted, quote, fraudulent valuations for his assets, leaving the trial to determine additional actions and what penalty, if any, the defendants should receive. The former president has denied all wrongdoing. And his attorneys have argued that Trump's alleged inflated valuations were a product of his business skill. Former President Trump intends to personally deliver part of the defense's closing argument at the conclusion of his civil fraud trial in New York on Thursday. Sources familiar with the former president's strategy told that to ABC News. The defendants in the case, Trump, his two eldest sons, and two former Trump organization execs, are represented by three primary attorneys. You have Christopher Kise, Clifford Robert, and Alina Habba. But sources say Trump himself is determined to deliver a portion of the closing statement. The sources cautioned that plans for the defense's closing argument still remain fluid. Now, Trump is literally freestyling. He's freestyling so much, he's coming up with options that people did not believe was an actual option. He said he will deliver his own closing argument. He has lawyers. He has what's called fitting representation before the court. But he wants to give a speech. He wants the speech to go viral, okay? It is a stage for him. This is not about him proving he's innocent. They've already judged that what he did based on the prime directive of the case was illegal. This is your penalty marker. There's more. The Manhattan courtroom, where the trial has been held during the first 11 weeks, is currently in use for another high-profile trial involving the New York AG's case against the NRA, National Rifle Association. She's a busy woman. And the judge in that case told members of the jury that trial would temporarily move to another courtroom to accommodate Trump. Let me take you to 1924. Put it up. You see that, fella? That energy, that spirit, that vibration is back on this planet. That's Adolf Hitler. In 1924, Adolf Hitler went to trial. Why did he go to trial in 1924? Because he attempted to overthrow the government. It was a failed attempt. A minority of individuals. They did not have the strength. They did not have the requisite power. So he went to trial. He utilized his trial to give his speech. In 1924, Adolf Hitler who has been judged by the world to be one of the most evil individuals in the history of the planet. He made the Nazi Party a household name. According to a book, the future architect of the Holocaust was tried long before his genocidal crimes. They had the opportunity to lock his ass up forever. Ironically, he was found guilty and they let him go. And his guilty verdict propelled him into significant popularity like the world had not seen. Meanwhile, Judge Arthur Engoron rescinded permission for Trump to give his own closing argument at his civil fraud trial after not hearing from Trump's lawyers by the noon Wednesday deadline. I got something to say about this. The judge wrote that he assumed Trump was not agreeing to the ground rules and therefore would not be speaking. Look at the judge's face. Oh, darn. I'm sorry I had to do that to you. Gosh. Oh, man. Okay. Hell of a thing. So naturally, I believe that the attorneys intentionally missed the deadline because the attorneys had to file a particular, not really a motion, but an agreement to follow a particular set of guidelines for the closing argument. This is normative when an individual who has not been legally trained is asking to do something like this. You just have to sign somewhat of an agreement. Let's call it decorum. Well, the attorneys did not submit it based on the deadline presented by the judge. Judge says, I just assumed Trump changed his mind. Well, it is the judge's discretion at this point. Now, the question is, will there be an appeal for this issue? Is it possible to file a motion? Yes, you can file it right now if you want to. It doesn't mean it changes the judge's mind. But what if something else happens? What if another outside of the box scenario takes place? Trump doesn't sign the agreement. Closing arguments start, and Trump decides to stand up and talk himself. What happens? Does the judge rule the proceeding to be out of order? Does it really even matter? Because at that point, what camera is going to stop rolling? What recorder is going to stop recording? He still will get his audience, maybe even in a more dramatic style. My point to you is all of this is about one thing: making himself seen above the law. Just hours ago, a Trump attorney argued that Donald Trump, while president of the United States, could have ordered an assassination on his own political enemy inside of American borders, and he would have immunity. It is a fascinating and ridiculous argument. Trump does not want to be elected president. He wants to be your dictator and king. You can stop him. It's called democracy. Brother, do you see it any differently?
Not really. It seems like he's constantly flying by the seat of his pants. There's no rhyme or reason or no strategy generally, especially to these court proceedings. I think politically, he usually has an idea of who or why he's attacking something. But in the court of law, he's so used to just skating and not having to be held to any legal standards in his life that it seems like he's constantly being caught wrong-footed. And this idea that he's gonna get up there and give a closing argument, and he's just, he's become convinced of his own, ability to be a great quote unquote orator. And so I'm not surprised that he thinks that he should be able to give the closing argument. What I would say is that, every now and again, Donald Trump does or says something that feels a little bit relatable. And it's this, he's clearly a fan of courtroom dramas, Dr. Richey. We've all seen A Few Good Men, you can't handle the truth moment. I think about A Time to Kill when Matthew McConaughey said, and then imagine she was white. We've all watched these courtroom dramas. I've watched countless hours of Law and Order, right? I think Donald Trump thinks he's gonna have his big courtroom moment, but unfortunately for him, I think if he gets up there, he's gonna make a fool of himself and he's gonna hurt his case. And I think that's why his lawyers are trying to prevent this.
Yeah, and I hope if he is out of order, if he decides to violate courtroom procedure, he's held in contempt and immediately arrested in front of everyone, taken to jail just like anyone else would if they disrespect court orders.